All right, so are you ready to take a deep dive with us into the Huawei Mate 70 series?
Absolutely.
Perfect. We've got a ton of reviews and benchmarks to go through, and basically this is your shortcut to knowing if this phone is actually worth all the hype.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack everything from the design to the specs, and especially all those kind of hidden gems that make this series stand out.
Yeah, I think you're going to be particularly interested in the camera system on that Pro Plus.
Oh, yeah.
And how Huawei is using AI to kind of make that more professional level photography more accessible.
Okay, I'm all ears for that. But first, let's talk about what you see when you first pick these phones up. The Mate 70 and the 70 Pro have these sleek aluminum bodies, which, feels pretty standard these days for a high-end phone. But then you get to the Mate 70 Pro Plus and things get a little more interesting. They went with a titanium casing.
Rare!
Which you don't see very often.
Yeah, not very often at all. It definitely makes a statement. And they didn't stop there. The back of the Pro Plus is this blend of gold threads and brocade fiber. It's almost like they took inspiration from luxury watch design.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. Speaking of looking good, can we talk about the display? It's a 6.7-inch LTPO OLED screen, which is a mouthful. But basically it means the screen is super sharp and energy efficient. Plus, they've got that 120 hertz refresh rate. So everything you do on this phone, from scrolling to gaming, is going to feel so smooth.
Yeah, and it's definitely a noticeable difference compared to older phones with lower refresh rates. It's that feeling where you feel like you're interacting directly with the content rather than watching it through a window.
I see. And it sounds like they also thought about durability too. They use a second generation Kunlun glass, which is designed to be extra tough. So hopefully you won't have to worry as much about those accidental drops. Okay, now for the part that I'm really curious about. Performance. All three models, the Mate 70 Pro and Pro Plus, are powered by the brand new Kirin 9020 chipset. It's a 12-core processor that scored a whopping 1.3 million points on AnTuTu benchmarks.
Yeah, to put that into perspective, that's about a 30% jump in performance compared to the previous generation. Yeah. It's actually on par with some of the leading Snapdragon processors out there, which you find in many other flagship phones.
Okay, so in everyday life, what does that mean for someone using this phone?
It means you can expect super snappy performance, even when you're running demanding apps or multitasking. You'll be able to edit videos, play graphics-intensive games, and switch between multiple apps seamlessly without any lag or slowdowns.
That's what I like to hear. Okay, now let's talk about something that's a big deal for me personally. Battery life. I hate constantly having to hunt for a charger. What have they done on that front?
Well, you're in luck. Even the base Mate 70 has a pretty massive 5,300 mAh battery. But the Pro and Pro Plus models take it even further. 5,500 and 5,700 mAh batteries, respectively.
Wow, those are some serious numbers. So what does that translate to in real-world use?
You could potentially get 2 full days of moderate usage. Or a full day of heavy usage without needing to plug in. Imagine going on a weekend trip and not even having to pack a charger.
Okay, now you're speaking my language. All right, let's move on to the cameras. This is another area where the Mate 70 series really seems to shine, especially that Pro Plus. It's got a 50MP main sensor with a variable aperture lens, a 40MP ultra-wide camera, and a 48MP telephoto lens with 4x optical zoom. Can you break down what's special about those specs, especially for someone who isn't a professional photographer?
Sure. So what's really interesting here is the variable aperture on the main lens. It means the camera can physically adjust the size of the opening that lets in light, similar to how the human eye works. This allows for more control over depth of field, letting you blur the background for those kind of artsy portrait shots.
That makes sense. But what are the AI features they keep talking about? How do those factor into the camera experience?
So Huawei has packed a lot of AI smarts into this camera system. For example, there's an AI noise reduction feature. That helps you take clearer photos in low-light conditions.
So no more grainy nighttime shots. That's a game changer for me. Are there any other AI tricks up their sleeve?
They also have this cool feature called AI movement trajectory, which helps you capture moving subjects with more clarity and sharpness. Basically, the AI analyzes the movement of your subject and adjusts the camera settings accordingly to minimize blur.
Okay, I'm really liking what I'm hearing about this camera. It sounds like they've thought of everything to make taking great photos easier, even for someone like me who's more of a point-and-shoot kind of person. But before we get too carried away, I know there's another big piece of the puzzle we need to talk about. HarmonyOS. The Mate 70 series runs on HarmonyOS NEXT 5.0, which is their own operating system.
Right. It's a significant departure from what we're used to seeing in the smartphone world, which is largely dominated by Android and iOS. It's interesting to see Huawei forging their own path.
So what does that mean for someone using a HarmonyOS phone for the first time? Is it completely different from what they're used to?
Well, there are some key differences. The interface has its own unique look and feel. And perhaps the biggest difference is that HarmonyOS doesn't have Google mobile services. So you won't find the Google Play Store or apps like Gmail and YouTube pre-installed.
That's a pretty big deal, especially for people who rely heavily on Google's apps and services. So how does Huawei plan to address that? What are they offering as alternatives?
They've been working hard to build up their own app ecosystem called App Gallery. As of November 2024, they had over 15,000 native HarmonyOS apps available, which is a pretty impressive start.
15,000? That's more than I expected. But is it enough to compete with the millions of apps available on the Google Play Store?
That's the big question, and it's something we'll delve into further as we explore HarmonyOS in more detail. What's important to remember is that Huawei is positioning HarmonyOS as more than just a smartphone operating system. It's designed to run on a whole range of devices, from smartwatches to cars.
Wait, so they're thinking even bigger than just phones. Okay, this is getting really interesting. Let's unpack that in the next part of our deep dive. But first, let's take a closer look at what using HarmonyOS on the Mate 70 series is actually like. Okay, so we've talked about the lack of Google apps. But what about the overall experience of using HarmonyOS? What's it actually like on a day-to-day basis?
So from what I've seen, it's designed to be very user-friendly. The interface is clean and intuitive, with a focus on simplicity and ease of use. It actually reminds me a bit of Apple's iOS in terms of its visual style and overall aesthetic.
So it's not just like a bunch of complicated menus and settings.
No, not at all.
That's good to hear. What about the performance? Is it smooth and responsive?
Absolutely. Everything feels very fluid and fast. Apps launch quickly, animations are smooth, and there's no noticeable lag. It definitely takes advantage of that powerful Kirin 9020 processor we talked about earlier.
Yeah. Speaking of taking advantage of the hardware, you mentioned that HarmonyOS has some AI-powered features. What are some examples of that?
One of the standout features is the real-time video summaries. Imagine being able to watch a condensed version of a long video, highlighting the key points, without having to sit through the whole thing.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
That would be amazing. How does that even work?
It uses AI algorithms to analyze the video content and identify the most important segments. It can then automatically create a shorter version that captures the essence of the video. It's perfect for those times when you're short on time but still want to stay informed.
That's so cool. It feels like something out of a sci-fi movie. Are there any other examples of how they're using AI in HarmonyOS?
Yeah. They're also using AI to enhance the photography experience.
Sure.
There's an AI-assisted photography mode that helps you compose better shots by suggesting adjustments to framing exposure and other settings.
So even if you're not like a photography expert, you can still take amazing photos with the help of AI.
Exactly.
That's pretty impressive. It sounds like they're really trying to push the boundaries with HarmonyOS.
They are, and it's exciting to see how they're innovating in the mobile space. But let's not forget that they're not just focusing on smartphones. They have a much grander vision for HarmonyOS.
Right. You mentioned earlier that they want to create this whole ecosystem of devices powered by HarmonyOS. It's almost like what Apple has done with their ecosystem, where you can seamlessly switch between your iPhone, iPad, and Mac. Is that the kind of experience they're aiming for?
Exactly. They want to create a unified experience where all your devices, from your phone to your tablet to your smart TV, are connected and work together seamlessly. Imagine starting a movie on your HarmonyOS TV and then seamlessly continuing it on your Mate 70 during your commute.
Wow, that sounds pretty futuristic. But are they actually making progress towards that vision? Are there any other devices besides smartphones that are running HarmonyOS right now?
Yes, absolutely. They've already released a range of HarmonyOS-powered devices, including smartwatches, tablets, and even smart TVs. They're steadily expanding their ecosystem. It'll be interesting to see how quickly it grows.
So they're not just talking about it, they're actually doing it. That's really impressive. It seems like they're really committed to making this whole ecosystem a reality. But what are the challenges they're facing? You mentioned the lack of Google apps earlier. Is that the biggest hurdle?
The lack of Google apps is definitely a major consideration, especially for users who are heavily reliant on those services. It remains to be seen how quickly Huawei can convince developers to create HarmonyOS versions of popular apps.
So it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. They need more apps to attract more users, but they also need more users to attract more developers.
Exactly. It's a classic challenge for any new platform. But they're not sitting idly by. They're actively courting developers, offering incentives, and investing heavily in their own App Store app gallery.
It sounds like they're playing the long game. They know that building a successful ecosystem takes time and effort.
That's right. It's not going to happen overnight. But what's interesting is that they're not just replicating what Google or Apple have done. They're introducing new features and functionalities that take advantage of their unique strengths in areas like AI and hardware design.
Okay, so let's bring it back to the Mate 70 series. For someone who's considering buying one of these phones, what are the key things they should know about HarmonyOS?
I'd say the biggest takeaway is that it's a different kind of mobile experience. It's not just a replacement for Android. It's an entirely new platform with its own strengths and weaknesses.
So it's not necessarily better or worse, just different.
That's a good way to put it. It really depends on your individual needs and preferences. If you're heavily reliant on Google Apps, you might find HarmonyOS limiting right now. But if you're open to trying something new, and you're excited about the potential of a connected ecosystem, then it could be a really compelling option.
It sounds like you have to be a bit of an early adopter to jump on the HarmonyOS bandwagon right now.
Perhaps. But that's often the case with any new technology. The early adopters are the ones who pave the way for wider adoption.
I can definitely appreciate that. I'm always curious to see what's next in the tech world. So for those brave souls who are ready to embrace the HarmonyOS adventure, what are some of the key features they should be excited about?
We've already talked about the real-time video summaries and the AI-assisted photography, which are pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But there are other things that make HarmonyOS stand out. For example, they have a feature called Super Device that lets you seamlessly connect and control multiple HarmonyOS devices from a single control panel.
So I could control my phone, my tablet, and my TV all from one place.
Yes.
That sounds incredibly convenient. Are there any other hidden gems you've discovered?
They've also put a lot of emphasis on privacy and security. HarmonyOS has a microkernel architecture, which is designed to be more secure than traditional operating systems. And they have features like app sandboxing and data encryption to protect your personal information.
It seems like they've really thought of everything. It's clear that they have a big vision for HarmonyOS, and they're putting a lot of effort into making it a success.
They are, and it'll be fascinating to see how it all plays out. It has the potential to disrupt my mobile landscape in a major way.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the pros and cons, the challenges and opportunities, and the overall experience of using HarmonyOS. But there's one more thing I want to touch on before we wrap up this part of our deep dive. So we've talked a lot about, the tech specs and the software. But I'm curious about the overall philosophy behind HarmonyOS. What's like the big idea driving all of this?
Well, it's all about creating a seamless and interconnected world where technology kind of fades into the background and empowers you to do more. They call it a shared future of digital intelligence.
So it's not just about like the devices themselves. It's about how those devices connect to each other and to our lives. It sounds very ambitious.
It is, and it goes beyond just connecting devices. It's also about creating a more intuitive and personalized experience. For example, imagine your HarmonyOS phone knowing your daily routine and automatically adjusting your smart home settings accordingly.
Like preheating the oven on your way home from work or turning on the lights as you walk in the door.
Exactly.
That would be amazing. But how realistic is all of this? Is it just like marketing hype, or are we actually moving towards this kind of interconnected future?
I think we're definitely moving in that direction, and Huawei is at the forefront of this movement with HarmonyOS. It's not just a smartphone operating system. It's a platform for the future of connected living.
It's definitely a bold vision, and it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. But let's bring it back to the here and now. For someone who's on the fence about buying a Mate 70, what would you say is like the single most compelling reason to take the plunge?
I'd say it's the combination of cutting-edge hardware and a truly innovative operating system. You're getting a phone that's not just powerful, but also different. It's a phone that challenges the status quo and offers a glimpse into the future of mobile technology.
So it's for those who are looking for something more than just the same old Android experience.
Yeah, exactly. It's for those who are willing to embrace something new and be part of a growing ecosystem.
I think that's a great way to sum it up. We've explored the design, the performance, the camera, the battery life, and of course HarmonyOS in depth. Is there anything else about the Mate 70 series that stands out to you?
I think it's worth noting that Huawei is known for its commitment to research and development. They invest heavily in innovation, and that shows in the Mate 70 series, from the powerful Kirin processor to the AI-powered camera features. It's clear that they're pushing the boundaries of what's possible in a smartphone.
It's inspiring to see a company that's so dedicated to pushing the envelope, and it makes me wonder what's next for Huawei and HarmonyOS. What can we expect to see in the future?
That's the exciting part. They're constantly innovating and expanding their ecosystem. I wouldn't be surprised to see them branch out into even more device categories, like wearables, smart home appliances, and even automotive technology.
It sounds like the possibilities are endless. It's definitely an exciting time to be following the tech world, especially with companies like Huawei shaking things up.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, and I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about.
I agree. The Mate 70 series is a fascinating blend of cutting-edge technology, innovative software, and a bold vision for the future. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add? Any final thoughts for our listeners?
I just encourage everyone to stay curious and keep exploring the ever-evolving world of technology. Don't be afraid to try new things and challenge your assumptions.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the Huawei Mate 70 series. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in the next one.